Hi, my name is Andrew Wells with Executive Line, Living Life on Purpose.
And I'm Matt Wilson, and we sit down with successful people who also live a life of purpose. You know, you see a lot of successful people and you often think, well, that's great for that person, but they haven't had to face the struggles that I've been through. Or maybe you're not that happy for them because you think that they're just living a life that, doesn't have some of the issues that you have. But the reality is we all face struggles. We all have challenges. And so the goal of this show is to encourage people by hearing the issues and the challenges that these people have faced to become successful. And I think you're going to love the story that you hear today.
And so we're here with Mike Herron, and he is a graduate of UAB. A local business person here in town, has had many businesses start. Some come, some go, but has been a territory or sales manager for St. Jude Medical. Now this is different. This is not the one in Memphis. It's a totally different company that sells medical devices. And so he's had his fair share, a very good share of success in that, and he did this for 26 years. Since then, right now he owned 3 pharmacies and currently manages 1, and has started a coffee shop called Nonfiction Coffee. And so this is where he derives a lot of his purpose, what makes him wake up every morning. So, Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so Mike, obviously, as we were talking before we got going, society tells us that, success is based on money or things or just all of the things that we can accumulate in life. And, with the amount of success that you've had with the various businesses, things of that nature, at what point did you realize that it wasn't just about the money, that there was more to this life? And how did you shift that mindset from just being focused on lots of profit to more purpose?
I think probably towards the last few years of my St. Jude career, which was probably 5 or 6 years ago, I started to realize that it's like a drug. The more success that you have, the more that you're drawn to more things and more success, and you also are deceived into the thought process that you do something that's special or unique, or you have a gift that nobody else has. You start to take on an understanding or a thought that you have kind of done something that nobody else can do, and only you can do it. And then you realize very quickly that that's a treadmill that you can't get off of. And when you realize that you're chasing after those things and they're not satisfying anything, so you feel like you need more and more and more, somewhere you've got to stop and say, what is it? What can I do in my life? Where can my life go? What reason am I here really? And so I started to get back into church. I remember going to our church and saying, look, there's got to be something different, something more in my life that I'm here for. And I was really placed with some very special men that still mentor me, still try to help me out, and to understand that I was placed here by God to do certain things for Him. And I've been given gifts, as has everybody, to impact the people around me, and fortunately, hopefully, people in other places around the world. And it just adds a whole layer of feeling like that there is a reason to be here other than you're just here for yourself.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I used to, just growing up, just thinking business people were this vanity. It's like, I want to be like them. And it's kind of this rat race where you're always, when you're looking at success, you're looking for that money. Mm-hmm. And then once you have enough, at some point, everything becomes easier. You're able to do more things with less time. You now have the resource to do whatever it is that you need to do, and then you have the knowledge to be able to do it. So you have a choice. You kind of have this crossing road where you either get to choose to do more of the same because everything is now easy. I mean, to buy a house becomes easy. Everything that's for normal people is easy, but for people who have resources, have time, all of a sudden now it becomes a game. And then so you come, and if you watch a lot of people, you know, on TV, the big guys, they say now it's more like how do you start to get to a point where you're now competing. It's either you compete or you find purpose. And if you get to the top, there's no one to compete with. Then you go into philanthropy.
Well, I'm not there.
But what's great is that you see, and a lot of the people that we focus on are people who decided to choose purpose first. They didn't. Right. I mean, you have a choice. When you get to that point, you can continue to compete, and now it's just trying to get better than everybody else in either financial and status, whatever it is. But you know, we're that's why we brought you, is like you chose purpose, and so, but to get to that point, it's hard because you're in business and things come and go, and you were sharing with us you got some businesses that did well, some that didn't, and during the times when it didn't, at that time you don't know that you're going to be here. And so share with us some of those challenges before you even got to the purpose side. I mean, there are times where you wanted to give up, you have the challenges and say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. And so now when it's easier to say, you know what, I'm gonna make things big, and I'm gonna make myself bigger and whatnot. But you chose purpose, and then you have challenges even within that. What keeps you going? And how
I realized, again, that you're setting a false goal of trying to be more successful, or you do think that I can do something, and you can. If you start making income or money, you're able to do some different things and buy some different things, and that to me becomes the challenge, is that you start to go down a very selfish road of wanting things for yourself, and you couch it around a number of really altruistic things. You think of I'm going to do this for my family, I'm going to do it for my wife, we're going to get this, or we're going to do that. But then it just feeds into this, and I think that's where Satan starts to pull you in, and he's got you trapped, that the more that you start to accumulate, the more that the responsibility you have to support that, and then you build a kind of an image that you feel like you need to maintain because you've done all these things, and so now you can't get out. Nothing matters anymore. So then your family falls apart, or they're put on the back burner. Your kids are on the back burner. They don't know who you are. The job becomes super way up the line, and the most important thing. And at the end of the day, you realize, even if it's your company, if you're gone, nobody really cares. You've built a culture that's similar to you, that now people want what you have, and they're hoping you will go so they can get it. And if you can fall away or go away or pass away, they're kind of happy for it, because now they get it. But at some point in there, you start to realize that people do look at you. I'm older. It always surprised me when people would say, wisdom of age. I used to never believe in that, but now I do, because I'm older. But I also had to look at the point that you've gone through the trials, and you've been hurt, you've been burned, and you've been betrayed, and you've been screwed over, and you've had all these things happen to you, and you've had successes. So you have a wealth of things that you can draw on to look back and say, if I could have done it better, I feel like that any success that I attained on my own, I only stood in the way of what God would have done for me had I paralleled with Him and run with Him. So I was my own stumbling block or roadblock. And so I wanted to get out of my way and say, God, how do you want to use me? And how can I take what you've given me and use it for a greater purpose? And in the meantime, I've read Robert Morris's book, Blessed Life, a number of times, and he references in there how even though you may give a lot away, what you do keep is better, in my case it's true, more than I would have ever thought I'd ever have. And so he's blessed me in that way, but I had to refocus my thinking from a heart standpoint and a reality standpoint. If I was going to have a heart attack and pass away under the stress, that I have to pull all that in and focus it in a way with an understanding and a truth that God is going to take care of me. I'm here to help others. So that was an ongoing realization that I've had.
That's strong. Well, and I think that, people need to realize that, number one, God doesn't necessarily want you to be a pauper. So it's okay if you have success and you have money and you have things, if you steward it well and you help other people with it. But the trap that we fall into is when we think that all of the success that we have is because of us versus realizing that it all comes from Him.
Right.
And, when you have that shift in your mindset or your heart and you realize that, yes, I do have these gifts and yes, I do have these talents, but He has given me these things and He can take all these things away. And I'm just supposed to be the steward of these things, but it's all His.
Right.
When you have that mindset and you have that shift, then, it's not just about acquiring as much as possible. It's realizing that, you do have wealth, but you've got the ability to impact the kingdom with that. And, so I think that, the company that you've started, Nonfiction Coffee, I think it's a great example of, you had to have the monetary success to start the company, to be in a place to be able to impact the kingdom like you are with it. So, if you don't have that as, a part of your platform, then it's harder to start this business that is purpose-based. But tell us a little bit more about, Nonfiction Coffee and how it's impacting the kingdom and how it's allowing you to walk in your purpose and kind of the heart behind it and the vision for it and just where you see that heading in the future.
Well, I really didn't know what that looked like. Everybody, I don't think anybody's any different than me, but sometimes you think they are. I never did understand. It seemed like everybody else always had in church, a great purpose, and I just didn't, and I didn't understand it. So I thought when we got into the coffee business of helping supply churches with coffee, that that would be a great thing for me to do with my resources of able to buy roasters, get a warehouse, be able to produce it, bag it, ship it, do all the different things we needed to do for the benefit of the church. And it's really interesting how God worked on this, because what He did was He showed me that when, yes, Mike, we are taking coffee and we are supplying it to churches and we're giving them a better coffee at an extremely competitive price so they can serve this to their members. But what I realized very quickly, and what my wife and I realized very quickly, was what it did to impact where we source our coffee beans in Central America. These people are extremely poor. A lot of people in the church world have heard of the 1040 window. All the coffee is grown in the 1040 window, and they're the poorest of the poor. And so when you see what the dollars that happen in the church will buy the coffee through their tithes, through their members, give us the money, then we go buy the beans and we roast it and give it to the church and sell it to the church. Well, we have to go buy that coffee, and most of our coffee right now comes from Honduras, although we have about 9 different countries that we source from. We start to see through our co-op and through a guy that works with us that heads all that up, on how that goes back and enables us to give the farmers a little bit more money per pound for their coffee, which in that 1040 window of the world, $1 is like $1,000 to us. I mean, it is amazing what $1 can do. So 20 cents more on a pound of coffee in Honduras is a godsend to these people. It enables them to keep their kids home. It enables us to help build a medical clinic, and put a roof on a hospital, and build homes for these people. We've had kids that were going to illegally immigrate to the United States because they had no job. But now they're able to stay home with their family and work on the farm because there's money there for them to stay. And these are prideful people. They're not wanting a handout at all. They just want to be able to make it on the work that they do. So we've been able to see that happen, and it's just fueled my business fire to expand it even more, because this is the way that we can go and impact people with God's word in God's kingdom on God's earth in a way that they can be self-sufficient on their own. And the people that are at the churches that we serve don't even realize it. And so we've embarked on a social media campaign to try to get these stories out on how it's impacted people, so they do understand that even though it's a little squirt of coffee in a cup on a Sunday that they really don't think about, they ought to know what they are doing for the kingdom with their tithes through that. And we're just a vehicle to facilitate it.
Yeah, it's amazing. So like in business, and I've done a lot of performance where you have to work out the numbers, and a lot of times you have safe profit margins when you're creating prices. Mm-hmm. And in business, you want to bring all your suppliers down as much as possible, get as much discounts as you can, and then you try to sell it as much as you can and try to figure out how to keep the difference. That's how you keep your safe margins. It's just normal business and nothing illegal or sinful about that. But what you're doing is that you're trying to increase as much as you can on the supply side. So it's like saying, hey, how you talk to your suppliers, your inventory, and you say, how can I get my inventory price up? Mm-hmm. And then you go to the retail and distributors and you say, how do we bring the price as low as possible? It's an inverted business strategy. Right. It doesn't make sense in any sort of business context, but when you're dealing with purpose, you're like, I think the question is like, how do you, I think I would be asking is like, how do you sustain yourself? And then the reason for a lot of the profit margin and trying to maintain that is you got to survive the challenges, you got to be able to manage through the ups and downs.
Right.
But has that ever been like, that would have scared me. Like I'm about to start this thing and say, hey, are we going to lose money? You don't want to lose money in this. You might not mind not making money, but...
And Andrew, I'm not real smart. I'm not very bright. I'm not the brightest bulb.
You've done fairly well with it. So
well, it's doing well. It's not... here's the thing. Here's the catch that everybody wants. I sit down with a lot of younger guys that want to see as I was reading earlier, what's the secret code to business? There's got to be something, and it's almost like an impression that you do something illegal to make money or make more money or whatever people perceive. There's not a secret code. There is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of long hours. There's a lot of work my wife Lisa and I do at the house, and she does most of it on the computer. But what we found was that what I've learned in my elderly wisdom age is that if I had run it the other way, where it was all about me and it was all for me, I would have never been able to sustain the farmers first. They would have left. The suppliers and my customers probably would have left, because then it becomes about a lower price. It becomes about a product or a commodity. So when you start to put purpose with it, unbeknownst to the way that you see God working, you don't visualize that. But what you do is you see people come alongside of you that want you to succeed, because you're doing more than just for yourself. Mm-hmm. And people start to see that, and they start to partner with you. And you see people come out of the woodwork on churches all over the country that call my wife up during the day and say, hey, we've heard your story, and we want to be a part of it. Mm-hmm. That would have never happened with me trying to be selfish with it. Nobody would have cared. As a matter of fact, they'd want to tear me down. Mm-hmm. That's what I created in my other life with my businesses was about me, that I created and it was all on me. I did it. But people wanted to tear that down because they want it themselves. Here they see the purpose. They see that there's something else going on, that God is involved in it, and they see a desire to be part of this company and what it does for people in the world. Again, I go back, we were talking about it earlier, that, and they're great, mission work, whatever, where you're building wells or you're providing food or you're helping people in need, but that helps them for right now. When they pass away, if they don't know the kingdom, they're going to live an eternity in hell, and they're not going to know Christ the way that we know him. And so what we want to do is put Christ around it, so when we build a well or we're sourcing beans or we're helping with a farm, that we are, making sure that they understand the gospel of Jesus Christ, that there is an eternity. And that they can live with Him forever.
That's awesome.
So,
Well, and I agree with what you're saying 100%, because when you're walking in purpose, it's not necessarily always going to be profitable in the world's eyes, but it is profitable in the kingdom's eyes. And, so like my business is a marketplace ministry. And so the continuous planning for someone's lifestyle, that means spiritual, that means relational, that means physical, that means, not just the financial aspects, but a lot of people could go to somebody right down the hallway in my building here and just get the same, advice that they would be given through a lot of different people. But it's taking the time to let them know that, you can have all this stuff, but it really doesn't matter without perspective. And, so I agree with what you're saying 100%, that, there's more to this life than this life.
Right.
And, if we live for now and we live for today and we don't realize that there is heaven and hell and that we're going to end up in one of those places, then ultimately we're not walking out what we're supposed to be doing on a daily basis. So you might make more money, but, at the end of the day, you can't take it with you. So, from the standpoint of just, you've done a lot of things and you've had a lot of success and you haven't always had this perspective. How did you handle, some of the struggles and the challenges that you faced early on in business versus now when you face a challenge? How has that perspective changed, and how do you deal with things now versus then?
well, it's a little bit embarrassing. Like I think we were discussing it. Yeah, I thought that I was something special. Nobody could do what I did. Nobody could treat people the way I treated them. Nobody had the desire or the drive or the work ethic or whatever that I did. And with age comes the understanding that you're really not any different than anybody else. You have a different skill set that a lot of people may or may not have, but you also realize that you can't do it by yourself. I started to run my life down the toilet, and again, and then that led into more of I've got to show that I can do it. A lot of I's in this, that I can do it. What I've learned over the past few years is how much more you can do when you empower people around you, and how you have to be intentional about the people that you associate with and that you let into your life and that you work with, because they all impact you a certain way. So if you can surround yourself and be very intentional and straightforward, is one thing I tell young business people. Be very open and straightforward with the people that you work with and the people that work for you. Have very specific goals and understandings of what you expect and require out of them. Then they can go do their job so much better. What I did early was that I would just assume that people would do things or work a certain way or do it the way I did it. And when they didn't, I got extremely upset and angry about it. And I held them to a standard that I really never set forth and never put in front of them. And so I've really worked and am working hard to make sure that people understand what my thoughts are, but I also want to hear what they say. There's so many more smart people than me. In this younger generation, I think we've given up on them a little quick, this millennial group. They're not driven like we were, but that doesn't make it wrong. They also are a little bit more grounded than I am. They understand it's not all about money sometimes. It's not all about fame and success and how big you get it and, whatever. They want to feel like what I do matters. And that's a great quality to have. And I welcome it because it gives me some sense of this world's going to be okay. These people are going to be fine. So at the end of the day, I think when you start to get, if there's one thing that I try to pass on, if it's about the money, then it'll be about the money and you really won't ever be happy. So if it's about other things, you may end up with more than you ever thought about because you're including other people and you're lifting people up and you're doing it in the name of Christ.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So it's about purpose. It's about, how are you helping people? So some of the things that you're talking about is like, you use the business, you're figuring out how to help your suppliers, how do you help the customers, which is, normal that we always try to do, but you're really trying to go at it from a very different angle, which is based off of a vision of helping people. And then you're using the product as just one of the it's just a context of how you're doing it. So with that, I like to say that I think you're a smart man, because you're doing business in a very different way. That it's a lot easier to do business if you squeeze this way and get as much as you can this way. You got this big margin, but if you squeeze it here and here, and then somehow able to manage that, it means you got something going on in your head, and you figure this thing out a little bit.
It shows you that God's involved.
Well, I'll give it that. So I wanted to thank you today for joining us today. And this is Mike Herron. If you want, you can visit him, or you can visit the website. It's
nonfictioncoffee.org is our website. We have our coffee there that you can purchase. And you can also read the stories about the people that are impacting what we do. And it's amazing. Thank everybody for what they do for nonfiction.
Yeah, so nonfictioncoffee.org.
Yeah, so thank you guys for watching today. I hope that you were encouraged by Mike's story, and please check us out on executivelion.com. Like and share this video. Please allow your friends to be encouraged if you were, and then you can also check us out on Living Life on Purpose on Facebook. So please let us know what you think, and again, like and share, and thanks for watching.